Hero, Commander Lukens, veterans, auxiliary, and fellow Americans, welcome. At the close of America's bloodiest war, mothers and wives gathered in the graves of their beloved sons, husbands, that had fallen in the Civil War. Yankee and Southern women alike placed flowers at the resting place of their husbands, sons, and brothers. Decoration Day, later known as Memorial Day, was spontaneously born in the villages across the North and South from the need to honor and grieve the dead. Within a few years, new traditions blossomed. Children across the North and the South marched in parades to their local cemeteries and placed flags and flowers on the graves of those who had fallen in battle. Speeches reminded citizens of what soldiers sacrificed. No doubt these speeches varied greatly north and south of the Mason-Dixon line, but the need to honor and remember did not. As a child, I too marched in this annual procession of American history. Each Memorial Day, our father took us to Muncy Creek to pick wildflowers, and then dropped us off by Stein's garage. Then my siblings and I joined legions of other Muncy Elementary School children as we divided up into our grades, Brownies, Girl Scouts, and Little League teams, and marched in the same footsteps of a century of school children to the Muncy Cemetary, placing flowers on the graves marked with flags. I loved Memorial Day. The flowers, the parade, running to find a grave with a flag. I loved it all. Yet even as a young girl, I understood the solemnness of this day. I remember saying silent prayers and thanking those who had died for defending our liberty and our way of life that we enjoy as a nation. I still love the school children and their flowers, the Muncy, Hughesville, and Montgomery marching bands, the mini majorettes, and the fire trucks. The parade is a gift that connects me to the people and the memories of my childhood. Now, as an adult, I connect with Memorial Day as a daughter and as a soldier. When I leave this podium, I'll place flowers next to the flag on my father's grave, much as women 100 years ago did. When I hear taps, I will be reminded that though he did not talk about it much, my father spent months fighting in the jungles of the Philippine Islands during World War II, just as many of your fathers and grandfathers did. I do not pretend to know the horrors that the soldiers of past wars experienced, but my 14 years in the Army has solidified my respect for the sacrifices made by all my armed services brothers and sisters. As we gather here this morning, thousands of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine, and Coast Guard are presently deployed overseas in Bosnia, Kosovo, Latin America, Korea, and most recently in the war in Afghanistan. Every day, troops leave their families, their culture, to live in very hot, very cold, or very wet conditions, intense for months at a time. The wives and husbands left behind become single moms and dads. Every day, I see the sacrifices these military families make, not knowing if their loved ones will come home safely. But what I also see are the dedicated individuals and families who are prepared to defend and sacrifice themselves so that the people of our nation can live in a country where life and liberties are respected. The soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, who protect our nation represent every single ethnic background in the United States of America. It is no accident that the first African American Secretary of State was nurtured by the armed forces. America is black, America is white, America is Asian, Hispanic, and American Indian. America is Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and many more faiths. I beam with pride from the bottom of my heart that I have the opportunity to work beside all members of our American society. As many of you know, I work at the Pentagon. On September 11th, I was finishing a root canal when I first heard the news of the plane crash into the first tower of the World Trade Center. Before I heard the report of the second crash, an announcement came on the overhead and stated, "All medical personnel to the front of the clinic." Immediately I knew in my heart, I knew it was not a drill. I knew something had happened. I ran out with my colleague, Dr. Sherma Safe, a Navy lieutenant. Once we got to the front of the medical clinic, a security guard told us to go to the center courtyard. A bomb had gone off in the building. Once in the courtyard, Dr. Safe and I entered the opposite side of the building to treat casualties and evacuate personnel. Looking back on that day, there are two reasons why I'm immensely proud. The first is that there was smoke and heat and fire and injured all around. Yet I felt in control. My military training had prepared me for this, and nothing felt overwhelming or shocking. I give great credit to our leadership in preparing and training us to think on our feet and giving us the tools by which to carry out our mission, planned or improvised. The second source of pride comes from the inspiration that Navy Lieutenant Sherma Safe gave me while we reacted to this terrorist attack. Lieutenant Safe rolled in the water and wrapped his head in a t-shirt to re-enter the building to save casualties and trapped individuals. And yet, Lieutenant Safe, a Muslim and a naturalized U.S. citizen, was born and raised in Iran until fleeing to the United States at the age of 14. This Memorial Day, let us honor those who have sacrificed their lives in service to our country by looking at how we live to support the values for which these men and women died. My childhood in Muncy best represents that, with the countless of adults who made this community special. George Wilt, who dedicated his life to providing a healthy environment for the whole community through swimming programs, tennis lessons, and the Saturday morning open house, free-for-all at the high school gymnasium. The Mrs. Heberlings and Emmicks, who led our Girl Scout troops. The Ann Fliggers, who ran the summer art program. The Nola Basors and the Mrs. Kesslers, who taught AP level classes before the high school offered such coursework. And the Dan Doyles, the Madeline Birds, and the Colette Shulls, who taught me not to think in black and white, because the world is so much bigger, more complex, and more beautiful than those two extremes. September 11th has taught us that sacrifice comes in many forms. Now that thousands of Americans and foreigners were killed on American soil, we have come to understand what it is that the men and women of the armed forces fight for and defend every day. Freedom is not free, and the price of the peace we enjoy and our way of lives is the blood of our fellow Americans. We pause and give thanks and remember those men and women who have died defending those freedoms, and pray for those who continue this great tradition. God bless all of you, and God bless America.
Thank you very much for that message.